Tonight on the operating table we have this beautiful Auden Chester acoustic guitar, which is in need of a string change and a bit of a clean up. So let's get into it. Alright, so hopefully this camera angle works okay. So as I said, really nice Auden acoustic, made in the UK, assembled in the UK I should say. Really great guitars. There's a pick stuck in there like in every good acoustic. Needs a restring desperately. These are really old now. Needs a bit of a fingerboard cleanup. Could probably do with a new 9-volt battery as well, but I'm not sure if I've got one at the moment. So let's start with step one. Just get these old strings off. So let's get rid of these string ends first. Now we've got to get the saddles out, which can be tricky depending on the tool you got. There's just no nice way of doing this, but usually you just use the little thing on the end of the string winder and they should come out relatively easy. Put them down in order, not that it matters, but I've got some rubbing alcohol here. I prefer naphtha, which is panel wipe degreaser, but I haven't got any at the moment. It does actually clean better than IPA alcohol, but this is close second, and you can travel with IPA a little bit easier. They frown upon it a lot less than essentially lighter fluid, which is what naphtha is. A little bit harder to get through checking. So let's see if we can clean this fretboard up with alcohol alone, or whether we need to go in with some steel wool. I think we should be okay. It's not quite dirty enough for the steel wool. Not this time. But we really want to get in there, get that clean. You can also use an old toothbrush. These come in handy. This won't hurt the natural wood finish, and neither would naphtha, which is panel wipe degreaser and is the same as Swan lighter fluid as well. Yeah, that's got it up plenty good. Nice. These are handmade acoustics, hand assembled acoustics I should say. They're absolutely beautiful. Bench grade acoustics. But this has just been on the road with me so much that yeah, it's been neglected a little bit. That's why it's in the state it's in. A couple of little battle scars on the side as well, which I was devastated about, but to be expected on a working guitar. So we're just going to put on a very small amount of Dunlop 65 fretboard conditioner. I've said on a previous video, you have to be really subtle with this stuff. You don't want a nasty greasy fretboard. This is just for a minor bit of conditioning. If you absolutely soak this thing, all you're going to do is make it dirty as soon as you start playing it again. So less is more, and also you have to buff the living crap out of this stuff until that fretboard is dry as a bone before you even think of restringing, because you do not want greases and oils on your strings. It's one of those highly debated topics, like many things in the guitar world. There's a lot of misinformation out there, a lot of arguments, a lot of wives' tales. But yes, open pored fretboards benefit from a little bit of oil, but only a little bit, and it has to be buffed fully dry before you even think of getting new strings on there. So I'm going to really give it some elbow grease as much as I can without my desk collapsing. Let's just check all these tuning pegs for stability. That one feels a bit like it could do with a tighten up, just a fraction. I think the stubby's going to be too big. It's just a little bit more loose in the hand than the others. So just a tiny little bit of adjustment. So all I do before stringing is I make sure all the little tuning peg holes are 90 degrees to the fretboard. Just saves time later. Face them all the right way first. It'll save you a lot of faff. So today I'm using Ernie Ball Earthwood Medium Light, which are, I've not tried these before. These are some strings that I had left over in stock. So I'm going to use them for me. So, it's a bit awkward when the camera's in the way. But essentially, to string an acoustic, you have to take a tuning peg. There's a little notch. Now, the camera's never going to pick it up, but there's a little notch in there where the string would go in. So you just feed that in, back into the hole, get it in nice and secure. Pull the string tight whilst forcing the peg back in, just to make sure you've got all the slack out. That'll make sure it doesn't ping out again when you're restringing. Sometimes the pegs lift up and it can take a few goes, but it's just the nature of the beast. This is an acoustic. It's much more of a living thing than an electric, and as such it can be a pain in the butt much more than an electric. Acoustics are, or can be, a nightmare. They don't like heat, they don't like cold, they don't like humidity, they don't like dry, they don't like being played, they don't like being stored. Acoustics are a pain, but we love them. Taut as I can get those. Okay. So there's many different ways to string a guitar. Let me try and get the camera in. Right, it's going to be quite awkward to do this and not get in the way of the camera, but I say many ways. I'm a pre-chopper. It's just the way I do it, because then I can put a little kink in and I always know it's going the right way. So rule of thumb is this about a peg and a bit more is about the right amount that you need. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. You don't want too many wraps on the peg. Some people don't realize that that's actually, counterintuitive to tuning. So then what I do is I put just a little notch in the string. So not only does it help you go the right direction always, but it just gives you a little bit, just helps the string stay in place when you're trying to wind it around the peg, because it can be a nightmare. And my method is 1 over, so 1 times over the little pointy out bit, and then all the rest underneath. Now what that will do is that will lock that string end in place, and once you've took the stretch out of these strings, they're going nowhere. So you'll probably over egg the wraps a little bit on this one. Acoustics are just a nightmare to gauge, because then they start slipping out of the peg as well, and then you get more. So that's 3 wraps, and even that's probably too much, in all honesty. If this wasn't my own guitar, I'd probably be redoing that, but that's nice and neat. Let's see if we can zoom in there. Yeah, so less is more on the peg. I'm just going to tune it loosely. It's clearly above pitch, but it's just to help everything bed in. Doesn't need to be accurate at this stage. So again, it's a peg and a bit. I'm going to go a little bit less this time because that was a bit much. I'm just going to, this is really awkward, but trying to stay out of the way of the camera. So pull tight, peg and a bit. And again, put the kink in. It just helps with control and stability. So put the string end through, and again, like I said, 1 over and the rest under, which locks that string end in place. It's essentially like having a locking tuner. Not quite as clear cut as that, but as good as. You don't need to tie knots in strings. You don't need to do any of that elaborate nonsense. Just 1 wrap over and the rest under to lock that string end well and truly in place. And sometimes you might find as you're tuning up, the peg will ping them away and get lost or hit you in the eye. Just happens. Acoustics, man, nightmare. Obviously, once you get the hang of this and you're not trying to do it on camera, you can get a lot faster with this. It's a bit daunting the first time that you're pre-chopping, but as long as you check that you've got the whole string through, like if you're doing electric, check you've got the whole string through the body in the right place before you chop, obviously. So as you can see, the beauty of having that little 90-degree kink is now you're never going to string up the wrong way. Now, you may laugh, but it's so easy to do that. You're on a pitch black stage, you've got no oxygen to the brain because you're knackered or you're rushing around. This is just a foolproof way of ensuring that you never go the wrong way. Okay, so it's now all strung up. So as with electrics, it's just a case of tuning up, stretching the strings, tuning up again, and just keep repeating until when you stretch those strings, they stay relatively in tune. But it does take a while, and you might find you get a few little prangs and pings. You just got to be careful, take it slow. You just got to be a bit more gentle than you would be with an electric. Okay, it's relatively in tune. So what I'm going to do is very, very gently, not as aggressive as you can on electric, but just very, very gently go through each string and force it between my thumbs and my fingers and just pull down on it. And what this will do is this will gradually take the stretch out. It's a lot quicker on an electric, but it does work the same. And then just tune up again. And just keep repeating, and what you'll find is gradually it will move less and less away from pitch when you do this. You can't get it fully to stop on an acoustic, but on an electric it would actually stop moving. It would stay in tune. But on an acoustic it's a little bit more just alive, for lack of a better word. But just keep repeating that. And you'll find the stability will gradually increase. On an electric it would only take about 3 or 4 passes. But on an acoustic, naturally, again, just a little bit more finicky. So you can be a bit more aggressive with the wrapped strings, but just be super, super careful on the high E and the B there, because they can ping if you're not careful enough. Beautiful sound in acoustic. Okay, so that's tuning and restringing acoustic in a nutshell. Once you get better at it, you'd be a lot quicker, because obviously if you're doing this as a live tech, you're going to be doing this backstage. You're probably going to be in a hurry and it's going to be noisy, so you then can't use very easily the headstock tuners. You have to use other ways, either by the jack, or you can make like contraptions that will act as a pickup, which I need to make as well at some point. So I don't work with a lot of acoustics, fortunately, but you need to be prepared for all eventualities, all clients. So that is on my list of things to make. So what we're going to do, this is going to be really hard to show on camera, but I'm going to put the guitar in playing position and just check the relief on the neck. So it's probably just out of shot, but what I'm doing is I'm fretting the last fret and the first fret and just checking that there's a little bit of movement on the middle fret then, between the two. People get too far into it with measurements and things like that. You don't need to do that. That is total overkill. Just get a feel for what feels good. Soon you'll be able to see visually what's too much relief and what's not enough relief. I think using feeler gauges and stuff, unless the client specifically requests a very specific height, then you need to do it by sight and feel. Okay, feeler gauges are not going to help you become a better tech. You need to learn how to do it by sight and feel. Unless the client, of course, requests specific measurements, then of course you have to follow those instructions. You can see it's relatively held its tuning as well, so she's already pretty stable. So what I would do as a last port of call is give it a nice deep clean with the Dunlop 65 deep clean. Now obviously if this was a satin finish, you'd have to use a specific cleaner suitable for satin finishes. Fortunately this is glossed, so it's nice and easy. You can really buff these up to a nice finish. If you've got a super expensive satin finish Martin acoustic or something, obviously do not put polish on it that isn't designed for a satin finish. Check that first, because that could cause some issues. Fortunately, no such problem here. Nice glossy finish. A little bit of a clean on the headstock. You don't want to get any of this on the strings, so obviously just be careful there. But here we are. Nice buffed finish. Nice fresh new strings. Nice clean fretboard, fingerboard. Another thing that people argue over what the name is. Both are technically correct. Yeah, it's just semantics, so it doesn't matter. There we go. And she plays a treat. Now obviously imagine now that you've got to do that in a quarter of that time on a dark stage, with nowhere to lean, no power, and that's one of the challenges of being a tech. All right, catch you in the next video.